Hi, my name's Carol Ann Manner, and I'm the clinical director at the Gambling Clinic of Texas. And I just wanted to take just a couple minutes today to talk to you about all the different letters that you may see after my name, either on my business cards or on my website. At this point in my career, I've got actually more letters after my name than in my name, which it does seem a little silly, but all of those letters represent either licenses or certifications that I have earned and also chosen to maintain. So there's lots of certifications out there, for instance, that I could have chosen, and the ones that I chose were intentional and meaningful. So I'd like to tell you a little bit about that. So the first is LCSW, and then there's like a little dash with an S, and with that's my license. That's what the L stands for, and so that stands for licensed clinical social worker. And to get that license, I first had to get an LMSW, which is a licensed master social worker. And to get my LMSW, I had to first get a master's degree in social work. That was the hard part. And then I had to pass a licensing exam and work under supervision for about 2 years in a clinical setting, which I did. Then, once those 2 years of supervised clinical work were over, I was ready to take another licensing exam and pass that, which I did. And then I worked as a licensed clinical social worker for a few more years when I decided to become a supervisor myself, and that's what the dash S stands for. And I had to do some training to become a supervisor and then apply to the state to become a supervisor. And now I'm a clinician who can go on to help other LMSWs, and I can supervise them in their work towards becoming an LCSW. The next set of letters is CSAT, CSAT, and that stands for Certified Sex Addiction Therapist. I had to do 4 modules of training, which is there were five, each module was 5 days of training. And then I also went through supervised clinical work to receive my CSAT certification. And that most of my clinical career has been working with individuals who are struggling with what we may refer to in layperson's terms as people who are struggling with sex addiction, but what is referred to clinically as compulsive sexual behavior disorder. And I'm also trained to work with their betrayed partners and spouses as well. The next set of letters is CMAT, and that's CMAT, and that stands for Certified Multiple Addiction Therapist. And you don't just get that because you work with another type of addiction. They train you to work with other types of addictions. The range of addictions that are of interest to me are people who struggle with financial disorders. And so I'm trained to work with people and gambling is one of those, and that's what led me to become a gambling counselor, which I'll talk about in just a second. But I'm trained to work with people who struggle with disorders that have a financial aspect to it. So yes, gambling disorder, but also people who sometimes they're referred to as debtors, but there's not really a behavior called debting that people get addicted to. Debting is kind of a consequence of a spending addiction. So I work with people who are addicted to compulsive spending. And then I also work with people who are referred to as under earners. These are not just people who are struggling with things like systemic racism or facing social barriers, or are struggling with aspects of life like single mothers have to work multiple jobs oftentimes to make ends meet. That is not what we're referring to as under earning. This is a chronic undervaluing or underpricing of one's own work. It's sort of an internal struggle, not facing external barriers or external systemic barriers. That's what we mean by under earning. And I work with people who struggle with that. And then the next set of letters is RAE. I am a rainbow advocate and educator. And that means that it's not a standalone certification, but it lets people know that I am trained to support members of the LGBTQIA2 plus community. And I have formal training in that. Next is the ICGC2 certification. Just very similarly, it's not a license, it is a certification. But I want to tell you that getting that certification and maintaining it is as robust as getting my license in the first place. So in order to become an ICGC1, I had to do a 30-hour training, and I had to get a certain amount of supervision and do 100 supervised hours of clinical work, and then pass a test that I just want to report to you. It was as rigorous as my licensing exam. And I think that is necessary because I think this client population, it deserves well-trained clinicians, because I think it is a complex treatment population, and the research into the treatment of people who are struggling with gambling disorder is very dynamic. It's very complex, and so I think this is an area where a high degree of training for treatment providers is warranted. So beyond the ICGC one level, I went on and pursued an ICGC 2 certification, which meant that I did additional training. I also had supervision or consultation for an additional 2,000 hours of clinical work. And I was very grateful to have that. I had a very skilled consultant to oversee my work. And now that I've met those criteria and I'm an ICGC2, I am continuing to work towards becoming a board-approved consultant who will then help others obtain their ICGC certifications as well. That's what I hope. And I'll let you know that these things are all important to me, particularly in Texas, for getting certified gambling counselors in Texas, is because there are so few treatment providers for those struggling with problem gambling in Texas. The need here is very, very great. As I've mentioned before, probably on these videos, there are many who are struggling with problem gambling behavior, and their family members beyond them are also affected by gambling harms. And so expanding the treatment workforce in Texas is very important. And so that is why I'm vigorously pursuing my own training so that I can go on and train others to have an expanded workforce in Texas to serve the families in need. Thank you for listening, and I look forward to talking to you again in the next video.